Welcome to Comfort Crime with Lindsay Sanchez, a cozy mystery podcast where no actual crimes have been committed. Today, we'll continue with Death at Dogwood Lake, a short story about Georgia Lennox, whose perfect first date turns into a perfect nightmare when she discovers a dead body. And instead of finding romance, she's pulled into a murder investigation where hometown secrets run deeper than the alpine lake where it all started. If this is your first time here, please start with Episode 1, Chapter 1. The link is in the show notes. And for everyone else, we'll continue with Chapter 4. But first, an update. I had a writing conference on Friday, and I almost didn't go. I was tired, my kids were off of school, and every other year I've had a concrete reason that I needed to be there. Sometimes it's an extra class I paid for, or a pitch session with an interested publisher, sometimes a teacher that I really love. The truth is, this year I wasn't paying attention to any of that, and I was tempted to stay home in my pajamas. But that little voice kept nudging me to go, and I'm so grateful I did. This conference is faith-based, which is one of the reasons I love it. I'm a pretty religious person, and there's one thing that really struck me this year. There's a message that I heard over and over again, and this message transcends any specific faith or belief system. But in every class, every lecture, and every keynote I attended on Friday, I heard the same thing. That was, listen to that little voice inside of you. You know the voice I'm talking about. That gentle nudge, that persistent whisper, that feeling that keeps pulling you towards something. Even when you can't quite articulate why, or when it seems completely impractical. If you're being drawn to something, even if it seems small or silly, listen to it. Amazing things can happen when we honor those feelings. On Friday, that message hit me both as a person and a writer. Honestly, it's like all my cozy mysteries. My main gals and guys are always learning to trust their instincts, to follow that hunch, and something that just might not be quite right. In my manuscript, Groomed for Death, the one that I turned into a publisher a few months ago, the heroine thinks the grooms of New York City's celebrity weddings are being targeted. Everyone tells her she's being paranoid, that it's just an unfortunate coincidence, but she can't shake that feeling. And of course she's right. She absolutely should listen to that feeling. And for me, more personally, it was this podcast. I'd been thinking about starting this for a few years, and I looked into it, and there just was not that much like this out there, so I didn't know what it could look like or why or how I would do it, but finally I listened, and it has been so much fun. If there's a voice that's telling you to do something that you know is good, that could bring more joy or laughter or light to your life and to the world, I encourage you to do it. And if that little voice is telling you to join my newsletter or leave a review for this podcast, well, I won't stop you. Now, let's see if Georgia listens to the little voice telling her that something's not quite right. Is Jake's dad in trouble, or is he the one causing all the chaos? Last time, Chapter 3 starts with sirens blaring, and Georgia's dad, Officer Lennox, shows up. Apparently, even off duty, a 911 call from your daughter gets attention. He and the other officers bring Georgia and a very quiet Jake back to the lake. Georgia's mind is racing, especially about that Dogwood Lake Community College hat they saw floating earlier. She wonders if the victim could be Jake's dad, a professor at the local college. Jake denies it, but he's obviously distressed about something, which makes Georgia wonder if he's hiding something. The teens agree that if this wasn't an accident, it was murder. Laura, Jake's mom, arrives at the lake, refusing to leave until the body is identified. Georgia notices the Dogwood Community College hat is now gone. Officer Lennox and his team identify the victim as Tom Harding, and another officer finds more footprints and mountain bike tracks. Someone else was in these woods. But was it before or after Tom Harding's death? The new evidence, combined with Jake's continued silence, leads Georgia to a truly shocking realization. Jake isn't worried his dad is the victim. He's worried his dad is the killer. And Georgia knows it's only a matter of time before her dad and the other officers connect the dots too. Death at Dogwood Lake, Chapter 4. Everyone knew there was bad blood between Jake's dad, Owen Meadows, and Tom Harding. But murder? It couldn't be. Georgia's imagination must be running away with her. Owen Meadows was an agriculture professor at the local college. He ran tests on dirt samples for local farmers and garden enthusiasts throughout the valley. He and his late best friend, Matt Butler, owned the nursery in town. When Matt died, Owen had run the nursery by himself until 5 years ago when Matt's widow, Rose, had married Tom Harding. That's when the trouble started. The marriage had been doomed from the start. Georgia was just a kid then, barely out of elementary school at the time, but even she had heard the rumors. No one understood why Rose married Tom, but in the end, they all assumed that it was more a marriage of convenience than any real love. Tom had a house and land in the canyon. Rose had half the nursery, and they each had a son. That much was common knowledge. All of Dogwood Lake knew that Tom Harding and Owen Meadows couldn't be in the same room together. They wouldn't eat at the same restaurants, and they took shifts at the nursery, so they never had to be in the same room together. They never had to see each other. So why on earth would they be on the same mountain? They sure as sugar weren't having a picnic. Laura pulled into their driveway. "Thank you for the ride, Mrs. Meadows," Georgia said, even though her head was spinning. "I called your mom," Laura said, parking the car and getting out, leaving Jake and Georgia to wonder what on earth that meant. "We'll do the party here," she said over her shoulder. "Are you okay, Georgia?" Jake got out of the car. "Really, it's okay. I'm tired," she lied. "And I'm sorry about the date, Jake." She wasn't tired. In fact, with everything running in circles around her head, she'd never felt more awake in her life. But whatever her excuses, Laura had already gone inside, assuming, like she had on the mountain, that they would follow her. She was right. Inside, Georgia was greeted with a bear hug and a sing-song voice. "Happy birthday!" Lisa, Georgia's best friend, and Jake's little sister, practically lifted Georgia off her feet. She was surprisingly strong for her size. Lisa was only a year younger than Jake. Their moms had met the first day of preschool, and they'd been friends ever since. So, yeah, Jake Meadows was Mr. Popular, Mr. Student Body President, and he was also her best friend's big brother. It really didn't get hotter than that. "Wash your hands," Laura said as she passed, muttering something in Japanese to herself on the way to the kitchen. "Come on," Lisa said, letting go of Georgia's waist only to grab her hand and pull her into the kitchen. Her oversized Led Zeppelin t-shirt sagged off one shoulder, and though Georgia was sure she had literally just rolled out of bed, her long dark hair was straight and perfect, and her skin fresh and dewy. Georgia glanced back at Jake. He wasn't paying attention, still preoccupied with whatever was bothering him most from the mountain. Could he really suspect his dad was the killer? It all seemed like a dream, like a bad nightmare, almost like she was having an out-of-body experience. "Wash your hands," Laura called. "Mom," Lisa whispered to Georgia while dragging her to the sink. "She is in a mood. We better just do it before she has a heart attack." Lisa squirted soap in both their hands and turned on the warm water. By the time they were done washing, Jake had made his way into the kitchen. This morning had felt like a date. No, it actually had been a date. But now it was like Georgia was just having breakfast with her best friend, and Jake was back to being her best friend's big brother. "It's so sad about Tom," Lisa said, flopping down at the table and patting the seat next to her for Georgia. "How could you possibly know about that?" Laura slammed the fridge, a carton of eggs in one hand and a gallon of milk in the other. "Everyone knows about it." Laura shook her head, muttering something about small-town gossip and the news of a fire traveling slower than the news of Tom Harding. But she didn't let the subject drop. "I want to know how you found out." She pointed the spatula at Lisa. "Don't make me come over there with this." Jake took the eggs from his mom and started cracking them in a bowl, helping out without being asked. "Shelley told me when I invited her for breakfast. I asked if she knew what all the fuss was about, and she told me." Of course Georgia's mom knew. She'd stayed home with Sienna and Georgia's younger brother, Nicky, but she would have been pestering her husband for updates. She would have been calling and texting to make sure that everyone was okay, and if she hadn't gotten a hold of him, if the service had been too bad, she would have called the station and gotten an update from them. "Well, at least it's a reliable source," Laura said as she poured some milk in the bowl along with the pancake mix and stirred vigorously. "But I don't want you talking to her for any more information. You leave her alone, do you hear me? This is not gossip. This is a man's life we're talking about." "Yes, ma'am," Lisa said with a smile, though it seemed sincere. If Shelley knew about Tom, and Lisa knew, it meant no one was keeping it a secret. Tom's wife of 5 years, Rose, had probably already been notified. She and her son Eric, a senior at Dogwood High, and Tom's son Ryder, who was the same age as little Nicky. Rose might be on her way up the mountain now, or maybe the officers had told her to go to the morgue. Georgia had never been involved in any sort of investigation, and she certainly had never seen a dead body. When she closed her eyes, flashes of the lake with yellow tape and Tom's body floating, caught among the dead trees, burned in her mind. The doorbell rang. "Thank goodness," Laura said, not pausing in her beating of the batter. Lisa, get the door. That'll be George's family. I'll get it, Jake said, wiping his hands on a dish towel and leaving the kitchen like it was a relief. George's mom and siblings burst into the kitchen, bringing life, laughter, and birthday wishes, full of the kind of day it would have been if half of them hadn't seen what remained of Tom Harding. If half of them didn't suspect Owen Meadows might have been there. The warmth and life of George's family began to thaw a little of the numbness that had settled over her, like the sun burning away fog on a chilly morning. Between the hot food, happy chatter, and Sienna's high-pitched giggle, Georgia could almost pretend that the disaster date with Jake was a dream. Until the door opened and Owen Meadows walked in, carrying his bike, his helmet still strapped under his chin. "Good morning, Dad," Lisa sang out with a mouthful of pancakes. "How was your ride?" It was fine. He unstrapped his helmet and ruffled his blonde hair. "I thought you were going to Pineville today," Jake said, his first words since George's family had arrived, beyond a hi to Mrs. Lennox and a quick high five to Nikki. "I did ride to Pineville." Owen looked at Jake like, duh, obviously. "Then I stopped by the garden center to check on a few things. I think the new nursery might really happen." "It's Tom's day, not yours." The way Jake said Tom, like he was still alive, made Georgia shiver. It was like he was testing his dad, seeing his reaction. The rest of the family didn't know what was happening. If Laura suspected, she didn't say, but everyone felt that something was off. Even little Nikki stopped chewing. "Well, Tom wasn't there this morning, so no harm, no foul." Owen forced a smile that was just as strained as everyone else felt. "Did you save me some pancakes?" Jake shook his head and went back to pushing his food around his plate. "Boys." Lisa rolled her eyes and loaded 2 pancakes from the platter in the center of the table onto an empty plate and passed it to the chair next to Laura. "Hi, Lennox family," Owen said, like he was just now noticing them. "And happy birthday to you, Georgia. How are we so lucky to have the honor of a birthday breakfast? I thought you and Jake were—" "Tom Harding is dead," Lisa interrupted, with not as much respect as people usually try to give the dead. "Georgia found him in the lake." Everyone froze, waiting for someone to respond, to react, to let the rest of them know how to feel. It was Lisa that broke the silence again. "So Mom made pancakes to make her feel better." She summarized with a shrug. "Is it working?" Lisa put more maple syrup on Georgia's plate with a wink. "Poor Rose," Laura shook her head. "That's 2 husbands in less than a decade, and now she's stuck raising 2 sons. Tom's little guy is a handful." "Ryder," Georgia's mom nodded sympathetically. "He and Nikki go to preschool together. I'll have to ask Rose if I can start a carpool." Owen went behind Laura and put his hands on her shoulder, giving her a kiss on the top of her head. "Sorry I went to the nursery without telling you, but I think the sale is going to go through. I just needed some of the paperwork." Laura nodded and scooted her chair over, making more space for him at the table. "Why is your hair wet?" She ran her fingers through his short blonde hair, her hands coming away damp. "I'm sorry. I must have been sweating." Laura playfully wiped it back on his shirt. Everyone laughed and resumed breakfast, like Jake's outburst had never happened, except for Jake and Georgia. She didn't know if anyone else had noticed, but Owen's hair wasn't the only thing that was wet. Clear footprints glistened on the kitchen floor, and from this angle, the front wheel of the bike was visible in the entryway. Clean. But if Owen had ridden to Pineville that morning, there was no way his footprints or his bike tire could be clean. Either he wasn't where he said he'd been, or he'd washed his shoes, his bike, and his head. A loud knock at the front door interrupted them. "I'll get it." Lisa ran to the door, unaware or uncaring that she was still in her pajamas. "Hi, Lisa. Is your dad here?" Officer Lennox's voice carried from the entryway to the kitchen table. Everybody stopped moving, stopped eating. All eyes turned to Owen Meadows, everyone gauging his reaction, except Georgia. She turned to Jake, who glared at his dad, his fists clenching his fork and knife. Georgia hated that she'd been right, that she could tell Jake suspected his dad, and that all clues led right to Owen Meadows. "Dad, the cops are here for you." Lisa came back in the kitchen. Owen stood from the table, gave Laura a reassuring pat on her shoulder, and walked to the front door. "Owen Meadows, I have to bring you in on suspicion of murder of Tom Harding. I won't cuff you if you come willingly, but you should know that you have the right to remain silent and that everything you say can and will be used against you." With every word her dad said, the tension around the table grew, everyone sitting and listening, almost holding their breath. George's birthday breakfast had turned into an episode from Masterpiece Theater. But if this had been a show, they wouldn't have gotten the wrong guy. And it wouldn't have been her best friend and potential boyfriend's dad. And she wouldn't be sitting across from his wife when her dad arrested him. It was all wrong. Lisa sat back down, eating her pancakes like her dad hadn't just been dragged off to the police station. "What?" she said around a mouthful of pancakes. "It's not like he did it. He'll be out in no time." Of course Lisa thought her dad was innocent. Georgia would have assumed so too. So why was Jake so sure he was guilty? Why had he assumed the worst when they found Tom floating in the lake? And which one of them was right? This has been Death at Dogwood Lake, Chapter 4. If you are loving the story, please share it with a friend. And thank you so much for being here today. I had so much fun, and I already can't wait for next week.